One thing to be heckled, but to have a screaming baby, you can't really come back at them.
Well, it's the worst form of heckling, really, isn't it? And it's not a suitable environment for a baby anyway. It really, really isn't. And it's very distracting for everybody. It's like mobile phones going off in a theatre and nobody answers it, because it's just this noise in the background that everybody focuses on. They're no longer focusing on the show. They're focusing on that. And obviously, the baby is crying for a reason. It's not crying because it doesn't want something. It has some needs. So surely as a parent, you should be attending to those needs. The child just doesn't have the language, obviously, at that age to say what it needs, but it might be changing, feeding, whatever the parents know. So it's actually quite selfish to just leave the child there crying as well, rather than tending to it.
Yes, it's not just bad for the person on stage, it's bad for the rest of the audience, isn't it?
And people have paid their money to see those shows as well. And I have seen some parents arguing in the past about bringing their children to things, whether they were suitable for them or not. But everybody has paid the same money to be there, so they deserve to enjoy the experience. It's not your sole experience, it's an audience's experience. And particularly something like comedy, you feed off the audience, so you need the audience to be engaged with you. I did a lot of Zoom gigs with Tongue and Groove in Manchester during lockdown, and you really do miss that feedback. And if the audience are distracted by a baby or anything, not just a fire alarm, anything,
So-
you know, it
so what would
really
you-
does detract from the energy of the show, and it takes away from people's experiences of it.
What would you consider acceptable then to put on a flyer for your show? Not suitable for children, or no children, please? Something like that? Would that be suitable?
Not suitable. I mean, I'm not one of these people who wants to ban children everywhere, but there are adult spaces. And the reality is comedy, even early morning comedy, unless it says family friendly, tends to be an adult space. Like I have a joke about Barney the dinosaur, which sounds very family friendly until you learn that it's actually about the fact that the actor who played him originally is now a tantric sex guru. There is nothing family friendly about it. You know? And it's just people. This is the kind of thing people are talking about. I've jokes about domestic violence. I have friends who have medical conditions who discuss them in detail, because we do sometimes use comedy as therapy. But they're not things that babies or young children, or even up to about 13, 14 sometimes, should be listening to, because you're supposed to have the freedom in that space to say these things, and the audience know what. And I'm not talking about a Jerry Sadowitz or somebody like that who you know is going to be controversial. This is your ordinary run-of-the-mill comic. But they're drawing on their own.
Yeah, stay with us, because we've got Lindsay in the studio with us. Lindsay Carrott, who's a journalist who's got, I think, a 7-month-old daughter. And you were laughing at Fran, but not necessarily on a comedy act. You were sort of finding it, well...
I mean, to me, it's not complicated. You take your baby to a comedy show. If it cries, you take them out and you're respectful to the other people. You know,
so what, you think you'd be discriminated against as a mum with a young baby if you weren't allowed to go and see whatever you wanted to go and see?
I mean, of course. Edinburgh Fringe, which is where Matt Ford was at, that is a family-friendly festival. If an artist doesn't want a child, a baby, a toddler at his comedy gig, it should stipulate on the advert over 18s only, especially if they're performing in a venue that welcomes under 18s.
But there are some mums, particularly mums, who complain that if something says over 18s only or really not suitable for children, they feel they're being discriminated against because they are parents and they have no choice. Either if they want to go along to a gig, they have to take their child with them.
Yeah, and, you know...
But that's not reasonable, is it?
I mean, I would probably do the same. I'd probably take my baby if there was no other option. You know, childcare these days, it's expensive. I've had a situation previously where my childcare has cancelled on me and I've had to go to a work event and I can't miss my work event, so I've had to take my baby, and then when my husband's finished work, he's had to come and pick her up. Because
but
that's
if the baby was crying all the way through, and we've all been to things where the baby doesn't stop crying, it's good manners to remove yourself and the baby.
Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I've had a situation, you know, where Mia's been crying, like when we went to the Commonwealth Games.
And I think you went to Latitude Festival as well.
Yeah, we took her to Latitude Festival. We saw Russell Howard, we saw Lewis Capaldi, the horn section. You know, she's getting to experience life, and that's what it's all about for children.
What about the point, though, that was being made by Fran, that not all the material, maybe, if the child is slightly older and they ask it, Mummy, what's she talking about with, you know, willies and all that sort of thing, you know?
But it's no worse than they see on TV, or that they're going to pick up at school or from other people. And especially with in terms of, we're just talking about babies,
yeah.
They don't comprehend the English language till they're about 18 months, 2 years old.
That's your style of parenting, isn't it? If you take them along to something where they're going to ask questions. But it's when they're babies and they're crying and they're causing disturbance to what should be, an enjoyable gig for all.
Yeah. And I would be considerate to the other people around there and take them out. But to me, I've been at theatre shows, there's drunk hen do's, there's drunk stag do's.
Well, yes. I mean, I hope Fran's still with us. I mean, that's the other point, Fran. Surely a crying baby is the least of your worries when you've got the drunken set in the back row really having a go at you and heckling and so on.
Well, I think you expect the drunken set, and they're actually usually part of the comedy. I mean, I've seen Al Murray do fantastic comebacks to the drunken set at his gigs. He's one of the best at dealing with hecklers. You can allow for that because there are going to be drunk people. It's manageable, and also the staff are aware of how to deal with drunk people. They're usually licensed premises. They keep an eye on people. They won't let people in if they're too drunk, that kind of thing. So there's a level, but equally, if you're bringing a child into that space, and I mean, obviously she did say she'd take the baby out, which is the point. You can't leave a baby crying there when somebody's trying to do something. But if you bring a baby, there are the drunk people as well. They can fall on people. They do other things, It's not just that, the language mightn't be suitable. I've seen people fall off stools. I've seen, bag it to walls. Also, if the pram is there or if the baby is there and a child is very small, a drunk person isn't looking out for them if they're going to fall on top of you on their way to the bathroom or something. So it's actually another hazard